So I saw a story cross my wire a couple of days ago out of New York City about a man called Christian Valdez, pictured here, and he is accused of throwing his current girlfriend in March of this year, and there's a reason why I'm emphasizing that date, onto the subway track in an effort to kill her, and this attempted murder ended up costing this woman both of her feet. Her feet were severed due to the train crushing them, presumably. Now, obviously, horrible story on its own, but unfortunately, this is yet another story about the failure of criminal justice reforms instituted at the statewide level in New York, because I found out through researching this story that, of course, this guy should have never been out on the street in the first place, because this was actually his fourth attempt at murder. He has done attempted murder now 4 times, and now finally, New York might be trying to hold him pre-trial. Now look, we're going to get into that, we're going to discuss it, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who signed up over at actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay? And
remind you that on Saturday, April 27th of this year, I will be at the Vulcan Gas Company for Minds Fest. Tickets, link in the top of the description.
FDNY and NYPD responding to an attack at the Fulton William Street subway station Saturday morning, where police say a 29-year-old woman got into an argument with her boyfriend that turned violent. Investigators say the boyfriend pushed the woman onto the tracks. An oncoming 3 train amputating both of her feet, according to detectives.
She may never be able to walk again, and that's what we've been saying. This is just one of many instances that we've been seeing this year alone.
So one of the things that struck me about this particular crime in a vacuum is the fact that the 35-year-old Christian Valdez decided to commit this crime against his girlfriend at 10:30 in the morning, a peak time for trains to be running, because that's how emboldened he has become by the criminal justice system. And like the report suggests, he tossed and or pushed his own girlfriend on the subway tracks, motivation behind that unknown, and that led to her having her feet severed by said tracks in this brutal attempted murder. And he has been arrested, he has been charged with attempted murder, but the thing is, Valdez should have never been on the streets in the first place.
While that attack appears to have been targeted, city data shows subway crimes are on the rise, with a 13% spike in violence compared to the same time last year. Just last week, police say this man slashed a 27-year-old man in the hand on the A train.
Because Christian Valdez, like a lot of people in the state of New York, is a repeat offender. He's somebody that the system had already gotten a hold of, but due to changes in criminal justice policy, due to woke interventions post the Black Lives Matter riots, he was released, even though when I show you what he did the first time, the first crime that he was convicted of, the crime that he was on parole for, you will realize he should not have been let out, because it was, of course, attempted murder of a mother and her 4-year-old daughter. And credit to Pix11 for getting this interview, because it's absolute madness.
And not let this guy out.
Jenny Aquino and her daughter Bella are still traumatized and now terrified, knowing their attacker is again accused of attempted murder. Christian Valdez was convicted of stabbing the mom and daughter on their Bronx fire escape in 2017.
I just remember what happened.
The 6th grader was only 4 at the time.
Yeah, that's right. This man, Christian Valdez, the man that is accused of attempting to murder his girlfriend, who, by the way, is also accused of another count of attempted murder back in December of 2023, in 2017 actually attempted to murder this mother and her then 4-year-old daughter. And you could still see the scars from the knife wounds on this girl all these years later. They have not gone away, but apparently New York's desire to hold criminals accountable has completely vanished. It has completely gone.
I just remember what happened.
The 6th grader was only 4 at the time, but the ordeal left her with mental and physical scars. Over the weekend, the girl and her mother saw Valdez on the news. The 30-year-old ex-con allegedly threw a romantic partner onto subway tracks as a train pulled in. Both of the victim's legs are now amputated.
Because despite the fact that Valdez was convicted of this heinous crime, was convicted of, again, trapping a mother and her 4-year-old daughter on a fire escape and trying to murder them via stabbing them, in which he stabbed both of them, he he was paroled. They let him out because, you know what? He probably had a sad life. You know what? He was probably stabbing this mother and her daughter, that aren't living in the best neighborhood, that are likely struggling with poverty themselves, in order to feed his starving family. He was probably going to use the energy that he gained from killing both of them in order to give bread to starving children, because when you think about it, Christian Valdez is really kind of like Aladdin in that way, or at least that's what the New York State Parole Board thought when they decided to parole this guy.
Do not let him come out. Do not let him come out because he's going to keep doing it.
Now, I just want you to hear that. I want you to hear this mother who says, stop letting him out. He's going to keep doing this. He's going to keep reoffending. That's who he is. Because remember, what we're told by the left-wing progressives is that all of this criminal justice reform is to help out blacks and Latinos. It's to save these minorities from the oppressive law enforcement system. But as you can see right here, these are non-white victims. These people are being victimized by this Latino offender. They appear to be Latino themselves based on their last name. And this mother couldn't be more clear that this guy should not be let out because he's going to offend over and over and over again. And offend he did.
Velez allegedly did this while on parole for stabbing the Aquinos. Not to mention, Valdez is accused of trying to murder an ex-girlfriend last December, days after being released from prison. 2 violent crimes in which parole was allegedly violated.
Now, it's bad enough that you paroled Valdez. It's bad enough that you let this monster out. And by the way, if you're wondering why in 2017 it says he was convicted of assault, that is the double attempted murder. This is likely a situation where he pled down to assault with a deadly weapon, but I don't play those games. When you try to stab a mother and her daughter to death on a fire escape, that is in fact attempted murder. But in December of 2023, again, not that long ago, not even 3 full months ago, he was arrested for attempting to murder his ex-girlfriend. Obviously a pattern of behavior where this guy attempts to kill women. So he gets arrested on that. Now, we have bail reform, and you could potentially hold somebody, even regardless of bail reform, on attempted murder charges, but they decided not to do so. Now, even if they decided for whatever ungodly, ridiculous, absurd, and stupid reason to not hold him in December 2023 on bail, to not actually prevent him from being released because he's a serious violent offender, a repeat offender, and an ongoing threat to society, he was on parole at the time that he was arrested for that crime. So normally, in a normal situation, in a sane state in the union, what you would do is violate parole. But the thing is, along with bail reform, we have a policy called less is more. And according to less is more, parole officers should basically never violate anyone's parole for almost any reason at all whatsoever.
Questions remain as to why Valdez was on the street and not in jail. According to former New York City Administrative Judge Barry Kamens, those on the bench have discretion, but he says this is eye-raising.
Which is very unusual. I'm surprised that he's out. He had to go before a judge on that parole warrant, and bail had to be set. Obviously, if he was out on the subway, the judge released him on that prior case.
So, if somebody starts missing their parole appointments or, commits 2 counts of attempted murder, you don't want to bog down the system by putting that person back in prison, even though they're getting a conditional release from prison under the condition that they follow those conditions. But can you really expect somebody to not commit attempted murder? Can you really expect somebody to not try to murder their ex-girlfriend and then their current girlfriend? Can you really expect them to not throw somebody onto the train tracks? They got a starving family to feed. They've struggled in their lives. Christian Valdez is probably a victim of the systemic systems, and not to mention the structures, because a lot of the problems are structural right here. And the structure that I'm talking about, of course, is the subway. And Christian Valdez's problem with the subway is that it wasn't more effective in killing his girlfriend. And maybe, just maybe, if the systemic structures were a little bit better, if he got a little bit more welfare, maybe even a little bit of midnight basketball as he was a kid, maybe he wouldn't be an attempted murderer. Maybe he'd be proficient enough to actually commit the murders. This guy now at this point tried to kill 4 people in total. 4 people. He gets 4 strikes, 4 counts of attempted murder before anybody decides, hey, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, we made a bit of a mistake. One of those people was a 4-year-old little girl. And by the way, that was a twofer. He tried to murder both of them. He trapped them on the fire escape, stabbed them repeatedly, and they said, you know what? After a couple of years, maybe the system was a little bit too harsh on him, so they let him out. They released him early. They let him back onto the streets, but they couldn't even keep the parole conditions in force because he was allowed to commit attempted murder again in December of 2023. And guess what? When there were no consequences for that attempted murder, unsurprisingly, this serial repeat offender, this disgusting human being, this violent, savage individual did it again. And now his new girlfriend has no feet. Now the system has created a disabled person. And again, maybe he's going to get out on this one too, because God forbid we could violate somebody's parole for attempted murder. This is absolute insanity. Remember, all of this is pitched as reasonable criminal justice reform. All of this is pitched as having people not be crushed by the system. So they're like, you know what? We got a sad sack story of an individual who missed one parole date because their kid got sick and then they just got violated and they got sent back to prison, and that's not fair. So we're going to institute less is more. That makes it virtually impossible to violate anyone's parole for anything, including attempted murder. And then you think to yourself, wait a minute, that story was sad. That guy was a sad sack situation, if I even believe that narrative. But what about that thing about the attempted murder? Shouldn't we violate parole when somebody continuously commits ongoing offenses against other people? Maybe less than a decade behind bars for trying to murder a 4-year-old girl and her mother, for trapping them on the fire escape and stabbing them, leaving them scars that they will have through the rest of their lives. Maybe that's not the best sentence. Maybe we could do a little bit more on that end. And then they just say, no, shut up, racist. Shut up, bigot. We're going to let this person out because the systemic systems, the systemic structures, they're just not fair. This guy didn't have a chance. He had too many chances. Let's be clear about that, because you guys all well know that even though they're putting up his most severe offenses on the screen right here, it didn't begin there. He committed more offenses before that where they could have yanked his ass off the street before he tried to murder the 4-year-old and the mother. But it is beyond inexcusable, beyond insane that after getting out on 2 counts of attempted murder, whether they call it assault with a deadly weapon or not, it was 2 counts of attempted murder, given conditions of parole, he was not only able to violate those conditions of his parole, but he was able to violate it by attempting 2 additional attempted murders before somebody finally, and I mean finally, said, you know what, maybe we should relook at it. And the thing is, New York State is so crazy.
After having violated parole once, and he's doing it a second time, I mean, the chances of his remaining out now, I think, are nil.
The reason I'm doing the story, and the reason the local news went out and tracked down this mother and this daughter, the initial 2 victims that sent him to prison in the first place, is because of what the judge said right there. He said the chances of him getting paroled again are next to nil. Meaning there is a chance, and that's the crazy thing, because there is a chance that his parole still won't be violated. There is a chance that the district attorney won't pursue a legitimate bail, or more importantly than the dollar amount that you set for this thug, for this monster, hold him based on his propensity to reoffend, based on him being an ongoing threat to society. Christian Valdez could get out again, and it makes perfect sense when you think about it, because if an attempted murder in December didn't stop him, and you can't use somebody's criminal history combined, the totality of circumstances, to assess dangerousness like is the law in the state of New York, he might get out again.
Something that keeps the former victims up at night.
If he comes out, he's gonna do it again.
This guy threw his girlfriend on the train tracks, damaged her permanently. Again, the 3rd person that we know of that he damaged permanently. Who knows what happened in December with the other ex-girlfriend? Maybe she has scars she'll never get over. And we still have to discuss whether or not this person could be released, because it's actually possible. It's actually possible that that's not a violation of his parole. It's actually possible that this is something that's a question mark for the judicial system in the state of New York. And Governor Kathy Hochul can play all these games, sending the National Guard to check old ladies' bags in the subway that she wants to. But in reality, in actuality, we all know what the problem is. It's called bail reform, less is more, and raise the age. These laws that need to be changed. You can't give blanket immunity to repeat offenders, treat them like first-time offenders on the premise that the system is the problem rather than the people who are actually committing the crimes. Look at this man's face. This is Christian Valdez. Valdez. And guess what? The person responsible for his actions is right there. It's this man. He did it. Not the systemic system, not the lack of welfare programs, not the lack of midnight basketball when he was 15 years old. His own actions, his own behavior, and he should face some damn consequences for it rather than getting another slap on the wrist. How many times does he have to do it? Is 4 attempted murders not enough? Is this not enough for us to say, you know what? Maybe this guy's an ongoing threat to society. Maybe we should send him up the river. Hell, he might even get on Joe Rogan in a few weeks because, you know, the innocence fraud guy's going to say, oh my God, he's such a victim of the system. We need to talk about the fact that he had 30 whole kids in his elementary school when he was growing up. That's what he did for the other murderer, Sheldon Johnson. That's the PR stunt that they did for him. They blamed the system for that guy's life. Well, guess what? That guy was responsible for his actions, and so is Christian Valdez. Lock him up. Throw away the key. If we had the death penalty, by the way, I would be in favor of it without hesitation. You try to murder a 4-year-old and her mother on a fire escape, trap them in that situation, stab them, scar them up permanently, and then you try to get 2 more murders under your belt, death penalty for it. I don't care that nobody died as a result of it because it's only a matter of time before this guy actually succeeds. Honestly, the one saving grace in this story is the fact that Christian Valdez is as incompetent at murder as the New York criminal justice system is at holding Christian Valdez accountable for his actions. But hey, you know what? Those are just my thoughts. They happen to be 100% right. There is no disagreement. But if you do want to try to disagree, let me know your wrong opinion down in the comments below. If you like this video, then show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about this absolute madness in New York State. Till next time.